Hey there, folks. Tim Slade here from the eLearning Designers Academy. One of the things that I love the most about working with the folks inside my hands-on cohort and coaching program, besides the fact of helping them learn and apply the whole instructional design and e-learning development process, it's that moment when I get to see them discover how they uniquely fit into the L&D industry. That moment when they realize, oh, this is the kind of work that I want to do. This is where I thrive. And you know what? That part of the journey is super critical because, when you're working to build your professional brand, when you're trying to figure out how to talk about your skills and create a portfolio that reflects what you bring to the table, you need to get specific. You got to get specific about the kind of work you want to do, the kind of work you're really great at, and the kind of work that you ultimately want to be hired for. But here's a unique question. How do you build a portfolio if you don't want to showcase any e-learning examples? This is a valid question. It's one that I've been asked many times before because you know what? E-learning projects tend to dominate most instructional design portfolios. And it's logical. I mean, they're digital, they're visual, and they make sense for, showcasing online. But what if your instructional design work and your passions live more in strategy or in operations or performance consulting or solving business problems behind the scenes? Because after all, not all instructional design jobs or L&D jobs involve e-learning development. Well, that was exactly the case when Kike, one of my students from the program, started working with me on her portfolio. Kike, or Kix for short, came to the program with a ton of experience, but she knew that traditional e-learning development wasn't her focus. She wanted to build a brand and a portfolio that reflected her real strengths, driving performance, improving operations, and creating business impact, not building RISE courses or storyline modules. So today, I want to do something a little bit different. Rather than walking you through every single step we took to build Kike's brand and portfolio from scratch, I'm going to show you a time-lapse of the design process and talk through what made it such a seamless, aligned, and intentional collaboration because she showed up with specifics and intention. So let's dive into it. All right, so here we are looking at a time-lapse of our build of Kike's brand. Now, normally when you're starting work on designing and building a brand, you don't usually start with a logo or colors or fonts. That's like branding 101 basics. Really, building a brand is about a voice, your reputation, what it is that your unique value proposition it is that you bring to whoever your target audience is. And that's something that Kix and I had a lot of conversations about in starting to design this was how can we design something and how can we showcase her skills that are focused more on her interest in performance consulting and how performance intersects with operational improvement and all of that great stuff. And so we had those conversations before I even started doing this. But, I am somebody who's very much a visual person. Like, I get inspired when I can see something that's representative of what the final product will look like. So I spent a lot of time initially working on Kike's brand by building her little logo and choosing a color palette. And she had a lot of inspiration for teal colors, as you can see here. And so I went and I got those colors, and then I started finding these patterns. You can see that on the right-hand side of the screen. And I used a lot of that inspiration in creating her logo. And I know we're moving fast through this, but I started with using PowerPoint to kind of create this mock-up of what this might look like. Now, as for our actual website, we built this in GoDaddy's website builder, which I've done with a few other students, and it's a really, really easy tool. It's, it's like as simple as Google Sites, but it allows for a lot more options and customization. And so I started by mocking a lot of this up in Google Sites, and I wanted to create a simple, easy to navigate website. And I played a lot with putting that texture in the background and playing with the colors. And here I wanted to create kind of a graphic for a hero section that you see here on the front of the page with that blue color in the background and the pattern on the right. And so in this part of the process, I was really just focused on getting her, front of page set up. And you can see that logo on the left-hand side using K for her first name. And I wanted those, those patterns, those shapes to be reflected in her logo. You'll see that evolved a little bit as we progressed forward. So at this stage, I was really just focused on building out this front page. When you're building the front page of a website, that's always the hardest part because people tend to want to put everything on the front page. When in reality, as I've shared before, your front page is really just a preview of what they're going to see later on in your website. And so this initial front page was very much focused on her hero section. That's usually the name and the graphic at the top. And then I put in these icons here. You see those flash on the screen. You'll see those come back a little bit later. They kind of highlight the three things that, Kix is focused on: that performance and strategy. I think it says something about operations, people-focused learning, something along those lines. And here now we're on the story page, right? So I've been going back and forth on the different pages to bring this together. One of the things I really appreciated about working with Kix is she gave me an abundance of photos to use to put on her website. So I was pulling those and throwing them in here and figuring out her story and putting that here on her page to tell, the story about her. All right, this page here, you're going to see a little bit of it here. I was working on several different pattern graphics I could use for the headers of different pages. And one of the things that Kix wanted was a blog, so you saw that added there. So I'm going around here and going through the website and making it consistent with the different headers, the fonts, the colors, all of that sort of stuff, which took a little bit of time. All right. At this point in the process, there was a lot of previewing, going back and forth, publishing. Now we're on the My Work page. Now this was an important page because I wanted it to not just be a place to be a repository of her portfolio, but I wanted it to really establish what it is that, Kix really brings to the table, what she wanted to focus on. You can see I brought back in here those three things with those icons. The learning and development strategy, performance support, operational effectiveness. I'm seeing those flash on the screen here. And so I really wanted it to be kind of the first part of the page being an outline of what is it that, Kix does. Where does she specialize? These logos here showing where has she worked, showing her deep expertise. And then later on the page, you're going to see where we got into the actual portfolio part of it, which we decided to call case studies instead of just regular, portfolio projects. Now, as we go through this, I really want to, emphasize that, building a portfolio, building a website, building a brand is not something you just do in a day. This particular project, working back and forth with Kix and the work that I was doing on my end, this was about 2 weeks worth of work, working in a couple hours chunks. So it takes time. You can't just, throw your name on a website template and call it a day, right? Now, a moment ago, you were starting to see where I was building out, and right here, I'm building out these case studies. Now, one of the unique challenges, as I said in the introduction of this video, was figuring out how do we build a portfolio that doesn't feature e-learning work, And so one of the tasks that I gave Kix was to go write some case studies, and she used a little ChatGPT to help write it. But I said, go look at some stories where you've worked on projects where you utilize these different strengths of what you're wanting to focus on. And let's turn them into a series of case studies where you tell what the story was, what the challenge was, who the client was. And you see this a lot on other consulting, agency websites, as they'll build out these case studies where it might have some visuals, but the output was the transformation that you initiated within the organization, not just, a project or an e-learning course. So you can see up here, we gave a little summary with the client, the focus, the role, the scope there on the right. Then we moved into the details of the case study, which was the challenge, the opportunity, the approach. So I was working on refining the content here, the key outcomes. The other thing too is that we wanted to include some quotes from people that she had worked with on the project. So we embedded some of those. So there was some social proof and testimonials of the work that she did, which was really helpful, I think. And so I created those. And the great thing is that, once you created one case study page and the portfolio page, I could just duplicate it, and replace the information. So it's very scalable in that sense. So you can see a lot of this was me just getting the content for each case study into the website. And I had to go back and work with these icons in Adobe Illustrator and the colors to figure out exactly what we wanted. Now at this point, I was trying to come up with a graphic to show on her My Work page how these different things intersect. I was going to do some sort of Venn diagram with the colors and the icons and put that on the website. You'll see that here in a moment. I was playing around with the text. This ultimately didn't work out the way that I was hoping, but you'll see that I took my attempt. I threw it on there. I wasn't too happy with it. So I ended up removing it and just going to having the icons and the text. Ultimately, these were the icons and text that were on the front page, and we just moved them to the My Work page just to simplify it a little bit. And at this point in the process, I was just fine-tuning, getting graphics on there and whatnot, and getting it published out. All right. So that was the time lapse of, Kike's website and portfolio. And if we go to the full website, as we're here on the front page, what I love about it is the bright, bold colors. I love her logo. You can see in the logo that she really wanted to make sure the I in the spelling of her first name was included. So I just put a little dot there, which kind of completed that K. But I think what I also like about it is that it really ties into the pattern graphics we see on the right-hand side of the page. And I just use a free online pattern, Bauhaus pattern generator, where I threw in these colors to create, that overall look and feel. And then as we continue down forward, we can see those three, areas of focus that Kike's really wanted to focus in for her work: the learning and development strategy, the performance improvement and change consulting, operational effectiveness, and team enablement. And this is important because this is the kind of stuff that, when she and I first talked, what I really appreciated was how specific she was in terms of what she wanted to focus on and what she didn't want to focus on in her work, in her portfolio, and in her branding, right? And so that became kind of the central North Star in creating this portfolio. And then as we continue to scroll down, we have a little bit about her background and then a call to action to learn more about her story. We'll go to the My Story page next. Again, this is a typical About Me page, a little bit about Kike's, her background. One of the things, too, that I was so impressed with Kike's is she has such a deep expertise working with companies like Amnesty International, Amazon Web Services. And as I come here to the work page, you're going to see that down here, Insperity, Chevron. And so it was important that, we positioned her as somebody who is not just a run-of-the-mill instructional designer or e-learning developer. She is, somebody who acts as an operational consultant through the lens of learning and performance. So we wanted to make sure that was represented in here as well at the top of the My Work page. And then as we continue down forward, down the page, then we have these different case studies, right? So for each case study, we have the title, a description, the client, the call to action to read it. And these, again, not displaying or not showcasing e-learning examples, which you see in so many portfolios. This was the unique challenge, right? And so this was very much written as a series of case studies with a little bit of history behind the project. What was the focus? What was Kike's role? What was the scope of it? Some of those good keywords. And then we get into the actual case study down here with the challenge, the opportunity, the approach that she took, the results, the key outcomes, voices from the room. In this case, this was a facilitated project, so forth and so on, right? A simple, repeatable format, but it allows Kike's to showcase and explain her instructional design process, her strategy, all of those things that she wants to be hired and focused on. It's not just the deliverable of what she created. It's really what was the problem she was trying to solve, and how did she actually create it. So overall, her portfolio was really a great collaboration in helping her establish her brand and focus it on the type of work that she actually wanted to do. All right. So there you have it, a behind the scenes look at how Kix and I brought her brand and portfolio to life. Now, what I love most about this project is that it wasn't about trying to fit into someone else's mold of what an instructional design portfolio should look like. It was about building something that reflects Kix, her expertise, her voice, her focus, and the kind of work she actually wants to be hired for. And you know what? That's the big takeaway here. Your portfolio does not have to look like everyone else's. And frankly, it shouldn't look like everyone else's. It doesn't have to feature storyline projects or flashy mock-ups unless that's the kind of work you want to do. What matters most is that your portfolio is intentional, that it clearly communicates who you are, what you do, and how you solve real problems. All right. So that's it for today. Now, if you haven't done so already, please make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and bell button to get alerted the next time I publish a video just like this one. And of course, join us inside the eLearning Designers Academy and our free community at elearningacademy.io. And that's the place where we help new instructional designers and e-learning developers grow their careers by focusing on skills first. Otherwise, my name is Tim Slade, and until next time, I'll see you around.